So this is indeed a privilege to be here. They don't come any better. Cheers TEDx, cheers KSU for this platform. I'm Azzopardi, the Dean of the Faculty for Social Wellbeing, a faculty determined, possibly hell-bent on ensuring social justice for all. I want to believe even for those who have rubbed justice the wrong way. Good evening. I am today reminded of George Orwell's 1984, which most, if not all, have dug into at some point in their lives. I refer to David Aronovich in his essay 1984, George Orwell's Road to Dystopia, where he states that the relevance of 1984 is a result of despotism, looking to be precariously alluring even to intellectuals and to the left. I'm also reminded tonight of Jeremy Bentham, a social theorist, who came up with the 18th century concept panopticon, a word derived from the Greek panoptis, all-seeing. It is said that he commissioned architect Wiley Reveley to create an architectural design that allows for a constant surveillance of prisoners, a conceptual model that reminds us of distrust, and it forces people to self-regulate. In other words, a system that circumvents on the principle that you have done wrong and it can never be forgotten or forgiven. Regrettably, this prison raison d'etre has been adopted in our factories, in our archaic mental hospital, a shame, and our regimental school system. Sad, but true. I do subscribe to what Socrates says, that justice is an ideal worth taking cognizance of, an indispensable virtue to ensure social well-being. But isn't justice about treating people fairly and giving them what they are due? I will not bore you with nuances that justice is more than following codes, but I'm sure, like me, you pledge to the notion that justice is about doing what is morally right and that citizens are able to navigate around the maliciousness. But I'm not consoled with the way our criminal justice system, and in particular our incarceration system, works. I will tell you why. Our system is possibly anchored in Hammurabi, a Babylonian king best known for creating one of the earliest legal codes. The Code of Hammurabi is known for the principle of lex talionis, the law of retaliation, or an eye for an eye, which meant that the punishment for a crime should be proportionate to the malevolent behavior. Instead, some or most of us have taken it to be literal rather than seek fairness, better represented by restorative justice, which is intended to address the underlying causes of criminal behavior and promote healing and reconciliation. But look how people think. So a couple of days ago, a foreign man was arrested. While he was on the floor, a police officer kicked him for no apparent reason. The reaction? Good for him. He deserves it, said a person that I was with. That is why you have a society which is degenerating, because there isn't enough of this. Allow me to share this with you. Hopefully, during the rest of the talk, you'll be able to join the dots, to connect the dots. So before I walk into a prison, I'm faced with these green, bulky, ponderous doors, these security checkpoints, these high perimeter walls, razor wire, fencing, searchlights zooming around with watchful attentiveness, shrilled barbed wire dressing up the surrounding walls, intrusive eyes of the CCTV cameras, bellicose and pugnacious X-ray body scanner, brawny, standoffish, unwelcoming correctional officers. Now, can I ask you to hang on to that for a moment? From where I come, academic activism is real. Simply put, it's about democratizing knowledge. Academic activism seeks to understand social and political issues. It is the practice of using empirical data to promote debate and conversations around social and political change. It involves engagement beyond our comfort zone, with an attempt towards a more just and equitable world. Academics, and most of us share this thinking, feel that they are duty-bound to kick ass. Yet, yes, even if this comes with a price, at times or most with an attempt at cancel culture, but on this possibly for another talk. Now, in Victor Hugo's masterpiece novel, Les Miserables, set in the 19th century, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with, Jean Valjean's story hits a chord. He's an inmate serving 19 years in prison for stealing a loaf of bread to feed his family. While serving time, he's subjected to punitive and degrading handling. As you can imagine, it leads him to acrimony. It is only after he is taken care of that things start to change. The act of benevolence transforms him to a degree, even if he still continued to struggle with his past horrors. This is frighteningly similar to what happens to our prison inmates in Malta. They struggle for redemption, yet are hardly given a chance to make things right, notwithstanding all talk of reformative justice. And this to explain why I'm so passionate about this matter. I appreciate that you might get annoyed with me, but I do feel for these people. Not for what they did. I struggle with sleep at times to understand how goodness within them was taken away over by nauseating and wicked acts. Possibly this might be the result of childhood traumas, intergenerational poverty, failure to identify family problems, who knows? But this still doesn't excuse them. I'm using the word prisons here purposely. It is no rehab, and there is no reform of any sorts whatsoever, as if. As one prisoner told me, whether it's a year, 5, or 15, we are still condemned to a life sentence. Or another who says, I've done terrible things, but I want to change. I want to study. I will be out in a couple of years, and I want to be prepared to do good things, but they don't want me to change. It seems that the institutions hardly give them space to steer their life in a different direction. If they don't have family, it's even worse. Andrew says one, I have nowhere to go, and no one wants me. And another who told me, please, keep visiting me. But I'm sad, sad in my stomach, and I think I want to die. No wonder our recidivism rates skyrocket. The systems are failing us. And being a systems person, we know that systems are king, are crucial, are fundamental. My guesstimate is that circa 15 people a week are discharged from prison, which total 800 inmates a year. So it's in our interest, it is in the interest of our communities to make sure that these people are healed and not incensed and choleric. Now, my interest in prison activism started when the family of an inmate asked me to help their son find a course of studies at the University of Malta, which I obviously failed in. All hell broke loose amongst the prison management of the time, because the inmate in question shared his concerns over what was happening in the prison grounds over a telephone call. They threatened and assaulted him. They put him in solitary. They moved him around from one division to another. They stopped him from doing any jobs because boredom, as you know, is a killer, literally. This is the prison we had, and to an extent still have. When I started visiting inmates, I soon realized that this is a festering organism. Stopping drugs through the introduction of scanners started justifying all else that was happening. Institutionalized brutality that led to one death after another from suicide. Reported disproportionate use of solitary confinement. Allegations of inmates being strapped to chairs and beds. The blocking of telephone numbers of social activists. And a general climate of fear. Quoting from the Times, it is our job to teach fear. An inmate at one point referred to the prison as the Bermuda Triangle. Actually, even worse. 14 or so persons died since 2018, and this apart from the alleged torture. I am indignant. But what does it feel like walking into a prison? Walking towards that green door on the left of that protruding structure we see as we drive by. It's terrible. Even worse so when you hear it close behind you. It startles you. The obtuse security windows sitting high with the scrimp incoming light broken into chunks by the solid iron bars too high for the inmates to see anything or to smell the fresh air. Instead, it's all damp with creepy crawlies, rats roaming the yards, dysfunctioning flushings, toilets that overflow with the crap of the inmate upstairs. Small 6x8 cells at times shared amongst two, fans that simply circulate the smell of body odor. The numbers on the outside of the cell block identify the oubliette. Then the question comes bowling towards you as soon as you step into that little green door that welcomes you into the search area that sits in the shadow of the big green gate. Min ġejt tara, hey, who have you come to visit? In an ill-tempered, grouchy tone. Foucault wrote at length about the prison system. In his 1975 seminal work, Discipline and Punish, The Birth of the Prison, Foucault shapes the liminality of power dynamics between prisoners and visitors. Visits are really and truly nothing more than another loop in the authorities manifesting control over prison inmates. We visit in a highly despotic structure with CCTV cameras and correctional officers and dogs sniffing intimidatingly around us. The layout is simply designed to emphasize domination and hegemonize the us and the them. And so true. Every time I visit the tension that starts building in me is immeasurable. Mind you, I do not forget that these people have done despicable acts, murdered, swindled people, stole. Angela Davis, a scholar and political activist in her book, Are Prisons Obsolete?, argues that prisons do not manage to resolve social problems. Ruth Wilson Gilmer, a geographer and prison activist in her book, Golden Gulag, Prison Surplus Crisis and Opposition in Globalizing California, speaks about the impact of communities of color, an issue that was in the news in Malta as well, with a couple of prison directors ago allegedly welcoming migrants with hose pipes and gnarling dogs. Marian Kaba, a writer, organizer, and educator who backs prison abolition in her renowned book, We Do This Till We Free Us, Abolitionists Organizing and Transformative Justice, strategizes a world without prisons. The whole system in Malta is collapsing. It's just a question of time. Bowman, a sociologist and philosopher, viewed the prison system as flawed and problematic. He speaks about the relevance of restorative justice and community-based programs. The awkwardness and uneasiness compress as you walk up to the area designated for the visits. The paradoxal benches that look like garden tables from afar are in fact yellow, cold, and solidly fixed to the ground. It all hits you piquantly. The prisoners, in the meantime, are seated on an aluminum bench hanging from the wall at arm's length. Close, but not enough. It keeps resonating in my mind, but why did you do this? They don't look that bad. The chocolate wrappers that used to be scattered on the tabletops are a weak attempt at providing some taste of this otherwise bland environment. This has been verboten as well. It's noisy, it's crashy, it's cold, it's hot. A heart-wrenching scene is the moment you see children meeting their moms or dads, men and women meeting their partners and friends, chatting with their inmate acquaintances. You have the odd grandfather, grandmother, engaging with their nephews, nieces, siblings, under the watchful and guarded eyes of the officers. And then the faces of those visiting and those being visited as they let go because the time is up, in a place where time ticks slower than in any other place. And the silence is raucous by the unassuming people waving their goodbyes. I feel upset that a moment or moments defined their whole life. Some of the inmates put on strong faces, others put up a reassuring smile, whilst others don't manage to hide the pain of having to return to their cell block, fearing they will never be visited again. One of the men told me prior to commencing his sentence that he will be separating from his partner, and I asked why. You seem to love each other. And he said, letting go of Rita is way easier than the thought that she is seeing someone else whilst I am in prison. The garbage bag packed with dirty laundry, all said to be passed on to the relatives as farewells are being exchanged. As I return to the security detail to get my keys back, my mobile phone and my ID card, I feel dejected. The fresh air, as soon as I walked out of this rundown building, feels pernicious. Goffman, in his acclaimed book Asylum's Essays on the Social Situation of Mental Patients and Other Inmates, argues profusely against institutionalization and its adverse impact. The social structure of the prison creates a divergent culture that detaches them from the outside. Prison inmates are doffed of their identities. The prison system warps one's behavior. The prison's narrative, in fact, corroborates that because they are given medication all the time to take their mind out of what is troubling them. Nothing excuses what these men have done and what these women have done. Nothing justifies the suffering they have forced on innocent people, their families, and the fear they inflicted. I visited quite a few individuals over these last years, mostly young people. I will keep struggling so that our jail is truly rehabilitative. I will keep pushing so that people are treated fairly and that our current future cases of miscarriage of justice don't happen. The clanking and tolling door closes behind me. I leave 600 or so men and women, most of whom are guilty for wrongdoings. Men and women who are broken and taken apart and having to pay, I suppose, for the ailments they have brought on innocent people. On a side note, I wonder if we will ever put the educators, the community leaders, the policymakers, the politicians on the dais that they might answer for any of the pain inflicted on the victims because they ignored the writing on the wall. I recall as I walk out what these men have told me. My father never hugged me, says one. My parents were too busy having a go at each other, says another. My mother died, says another. My parents had given up on me. Today I went to see Michael in prison. Michael was condemned to 2 years in prison for arson. He has spent 7 years before being incarcerated, living on the street, starting at 16, eating pastizzi and smoking synthetic cannabis, which have fried his mind and drove him around the bend. His mom, his dad, his sister don't want anything to do with him. His only link is his grandma, yet she is understandably afraid of him. This time next month, he will be out of prison with nowhere to go. In a year, I predict he will be dead. You mark my words. And I soldier on, believing that there is good in everyone. It just needs unpacking. And as I speak, these men and women who have wronged our communities are struggling with their thoughts, trying to fathom what made them act in that way that they have, and I have this terrible feeling that I miss them and wish them well. But I will not stop. It's not the most popular of things to do in my life, but I know how important it is for them to have someone to talk to and share their thoughts with. During my visits, I try to listen empathically, as there is always hope for redemption. But however hard they try, prison will always be prison. There is nothing normal and nothing healing in it. At least, not the one in Malta.